All right, welcome to our first video of Computex 2026. I have not been here in 8 years, so it's kind of fun to see some stuff that we're gonna be checking out this week. I'm actually at this really neat recording space that Corsair has set up, and I'm already getting a little spoiled by this because I'm not having to like fight the crowd to talk and look at stuff. But we got a few things we want to talk about here because I'm gonna be honest, it's been a long time since I've really kind of paid attention to what a lot of like the big companies have been doing, and Corsair being one of them.
Computex 2026 coverage is proudly sponsored by Fantex, with support from ASUS ROG, NZXT, Haven, and Cooler Master helping us bring you wall-to-wall coverage direct from Taipei.
This right here we'll start with is the Warthog. This is essentially kind of a case that they came up with that's based on the 4000 frame or the frame 4000 internals, but this really throws back to like the C70 era where there was like kind of like an ammo crate style case. I remember Nick was hugely interested in that case back in the day because back then Nick had a saber tooth and really loved the whole mil-spec look of stuff. And that's exactly what this is, but it's kind of designed to be, think of like a futuristic military type of style. I'm gonna tell you right now, I have no idea what it weighs, but it is extremely weighty because all of the panels on the outside are full steel construction. So we'll take the side panel off here real quick. You can see it's got a glass with some color on here to give you sort of this military look that matches right here. Kind of surprising, they took the time and the energy to make glass that has this green cutaway right here that matches the opening. This is supposed to block glare, so if you have lighting on the inside, it's not gonna really kind of shine through in between the glass right here, so it blocks all the light between the glass and the metal frame. If we look at the internals here, see it's got a lot of the stuff that you expect to see based on the frame 4000. If we take off the back panel, very similar design. We have some intake fans on the side, which are obviously filtered. So here's the back of the motherboard tray. You can see you have a drive mount right here, which is obviously removable, screwed down pretty tight. Supports back connect motherboards, but they also have right here the quick route cable management, which is pretty neat. All these different holes or different places you can use these included cable clips, which basically allow you to have these tie down points anywhere it's convenient for you to have some cable management in there. So yeah, it's pretty neat. If we take a look here, you can see obviously you have your Velcro straps that are in there. You can support a 360 on the side right here. Obviously you can support a 360 on the top. It has two versions though. You can see this guy has two 180 millimeter pre-installed fans. It has an MSRP of $199, or you can get it for $169 if you get the fanless model. But it also features the 3D mesh on here, which is designed to improve airflow, reduce the amount of acoustics that the fans are making. And I think it's a pretty neat style. The price is aggressive. I think at $169, it puts it in a price point that, honestly, there's a lot of competition. And I don't think any of the competition at that price point is giving you this aesthetic, which is kind of cool. Because to me, this feels like a throwback to some of the earlier days. Like I said, with the C70 from Corsair, that's probably 15 years ago, at least at this point. But yeah, tell me what you guys think down below. It comes in two colors right now. It comes in black and it comes in this kind of a military green. I'm curious as to what colors you guys think it should come into. I think a carbon fiber version of it, even if it's not real carbon fiber, let's say it's just, you know, hydro dipped or something like that, would look really, really good with this, especially if we're talking about the, you know, the modern military aesthetic. Let's talk about the front real quick. It's got this hinge that's on there, so you can open up the front to have easy access to the fan filters to remove. The fans that are included here are actually 200 millimeter by 30 millimeter fans, so they're all about high CFM, low noise. Big fans like this can operate at a much lower RPM, which really reduces the acoustics, but because of the size of the fan, it just moves a massive amount of air. But $200 for this config with the two included 200 millimeter fans, $169 if you want the fanless edition. The front switches, as you can see, are very military derivative. You even have this little flip right here for the power button. Oh, that's a reset button. Power button's right there, but it's got this these little brackets right here, basically to stop you from accidentally bumping them, very military style. But there's also a light button right here. That is not to control lighting inside the case like so many cases feature. That is to control this little light right here that shines down on the I/O in the back. That way when you're trying to plug things in, you're not trying to use your phone and use your flashlight camera, your camera flashlight to see this. It actually has its own built-in light. So you can toggle that light on and off by hitting that button right there. And then of course we've got just our little military style strap. These are functional handles on the top too, so you can pick it up and move it around based on those. Those are fully tied into the chassis. And then, yeah, everything else is pretty standard of what you'd expect to be based on the 4000, the frame 4000s. I love the style of this. The green military has a lot of like, kind of a Doom Eternal sort of look to it. Comes in black, comes in green, And we're curious as what other colors you think it should come in. I know some of the concept they sort of played around with too even was like think of like a digital navy camo. So it'd be like blues and grays in that digital print. I thought carbon fiber would look really neat in this, or even maybe like a snow camo, perhaps even maybe even an urban camo, like whites and grays would look really neat. But that's the cool thing about that. When it comes to aesthetics, they can easily add those later on and play around with that. But I think the green was a great place to start with that throwback to the C70. One other thing too is this fan filter comes out the side. Thank God for that. So many companies make the fan filters come out the back, which is absolutely, where's the rail? There we go. Which is absolutely counterintuitive. If you have it pushed against a wall or a window and it's all cable managed into your desk, trying to get that fan filter out through the back is a complete nightmare. So that is not something that I think any case should ever feature. Thank God this one doesn't. Okay, let's talk AIOs for a second. I'm gonna be honest, I saw this on the wall initially and I was like, okay, it's another AIO with a fat rad. Has a screen on there. You kind of have to these days. And it obviously uses the Corsair Link system. It's got a pretty interesting TIM design. We'll talk about that in a sec. But I was quickly corrected. This is not a thicker radiator. This is actually two radiators, effectively. So what looks like is a side-by-side here where you're used to it being a double pass where it comes in one half, makes a turn, and comes back. This is actually two radiators stacked on top of each other. They even have two different fin densities on there. So the water actually comes into the top and then comes across right here. The top right here is the hot side. This actually has a lower FPI at 12 FPI or fins per inch. And then it makes a turn down and then comes across this side of the rad where the liquid's gonna be colder and it actually has a denser 14 FPI. Now the idea here is that the coldest air is gonna be moving through the coldest fluid, picking up a little bit less of the heat, but some obviously, because there is passive cooling to any rad. Even if there's no fans on it, there is some passive cooling to it. So you have cooler air coming through and then hitting the hotter side, exhausting out. So the optimum configuration for this, if you're running it as a top radiator, is absolutely going to be a push through the rad to exhausting out the top. If you are putting this internally, like say in the motherboard tray, then you still need to use it as an exhaust, which is kind of backwards from what a lot of people consider is that, hey, bring the coldest air from outside the case through and bring it as an intake, and then you'll have the warmer air just dealt with by the chassis fans. But in this particular instance, it was explained to me that if you did that, you wouldn't see the benefit of the stack design. This temperature would be basically the same as any other thicker 360. But as soon as you use it in the way that it was designed, you'll notice a few degrees drop on the coolant temperature, which obviously leads to colder CPU temperature. So I thought that this was really interesting. It's truly kind of a midway between a custom open loop and an AIO. So this is actually pretty interesting and unique. I'd love to see a cutaway of this because that means that this has to be an offset stacked inlet where one comes up one way and it's blocked off across horizontally, then the other side is blocked off. So it would be a really weird kind of a grid system. I kind of want to cut one of those open. Anyway, when it comes to the thermal interface material, it's actually a phase change with kind of a gasket around it. So at room temp, it's solid. And then once it's under heat, it then turns into a liquid and then spreads like a paste. Now the downside is it is a one-time use. So it's one of those things where if, let's say you go to put it on your motherboard and you're like, oh crap, I have to turn it because the Ultra has this large screen on here which only goes one direction. And the reason for that, as you can see, you've got these pogo pins that have to line up with the actual base of the pump right here, or the pump top, to be able to communicate with the screen. And if you run it in a small chassis, you'll realize like you can't really fit it portrait style because it might interfere with a lower clearance between the radiators and the fans in the top of this. If you go to turn it, as long as you haven't heated it up, you can remove it, turn it, and put it back without damaging any of the TIM that's pre-applied to the block. So that was a question that I had, is like, okay, do you provide any sort of extras in the box for this? The answer was no. I said, can you get them from Corsair? The answer was yes. And then I asked that question, well, what if you have to rotate it because you pre-installed it wrong? And again, as long as you did not heat it up and phase change it, then you're gonna be fine. So also too, the Ultra kind of has a couple of options too. It does work with any of the other style pump tops. You can see right here that this LCD screen down in there actually has a downdraft fan, which is designed to help cool the VRMs and other components that are right around the CPU. So they have this RGB top right here, so any of the lighting will kind of shine through this grid, or you can get this with a downfire fan as well. So if you decide not to use the screen for some reason, you can still get the downfire downdraft fan separate top. So this is the Titan II LCD Ultra. And what I feel like they should do is have an in-between SKU where you can get it with maybe without the screen, but with the downfire fan, but with the technology of the dual style rad. So I think that that would be a really interesting SKU to take a look at. It's nice to see an AIO that's not just another Asetek rebranded, lasts a year or two crap before it starts to evaporate. It's neat to see something like this that actually has true cooling potential. It's something I do want to take a look at. Okay, so let's talk about power supplies, because they're boring. They supply power to your thing. As long as they don't hurt your thing, most people don't care. That's changed. The story's changed because we were given a lovely scenario which power supply companies had to sort of reinvent the wheel on how to protect components that don't protect themselves. So this is what we have right here, 3 different power supplies from Corsair. A lot of brands are now starting to go into the pin monitoring type of style, but everyone's sort of approaching it a little bit differently. If you don't have an ASUS Matrix or an MSI Lightning or an Astral card, your card is not going to tell you if something's wrong with the cable or for whatever the magic sauce is that's causing them to fail, and they'll just melt themselves down quite literally. So what we have here are 3 different power supplies from Corsair. This is the AX1600i. Think of this as an enthusiast overclocking type of model. We have the HX100i. Think of this one as like your full insurance model. And then we have the RM1200E, and these do come in other wattages, obviously. These are the 3 on the table. And they all sort of approach this a little bit differently. You may have heard of the Thermal Protect cable that Corsair has recently kind of launched and released. And that's where it's doing more of a temperature monitoring system, where it is making sure that the cables are not overheating. If they kind of hit a certain temperature threshold, then it will shut down the power supply to save your system. It's really kind of brute force and abrupt. A scenario where that might matter is, let's say you're not gaming, but you're doing CAD design or you're doing CAD rendering, which can hit power supply or the GPUs pretty hard and has the same problem. There have been plenty of people who've had their cables melt when they're just idle in the computer and not even gaming. So that sudden shutdown could be damaging or harmful to the work that you haven't saved. So the AX1600i, as the enthusiast overclocking system, has the Thermal Protect if you're running the Thermal Protect cable. Other than that, it's pretty much just give me the highest valued components you can put in here, the best capacitors, the best components, the best cooling capabilities, so that you can do XOC overclocking and such. We'd have to actually probably run a couple of these with some of the cards that we're running over 2,000 watts for. Definitely a Halo product. You can see here it does have what looks like an IQ hub in there, but it's not. This isn't a link hub. It's actually just a pass-through, different than like the HX1500i, which I used in a recent build that had the hub built in, which is amazingly convenient to not have to run any power to any of the other hubs. Didn't even have to run the other hubs. But this is actually extremely heavy. It's crazy how heavy that is. It's like they said in Jurassic Park, is it heavy? Yes, then it's expensive, put it down. So the quality is there. If we talk about the RM1200E, this one does not have Thermal Protect, but it has PinSense, where this is an electronic or a digital power supply that actually ties into IQ, where you can see the individual amps and power going through each individual pin. So it has PinSense, which says, okay, outside of thermals, 9.2 amps per pin is like the spec for a 600 watt power draw. If it hits 12 amps on any of those cables, warn the user that, hey, something's out of spec, save your work, we need to shut down. And you can go into IQ and set those thresholds and make it safer for you and your work. For me personally, I'd be like, hey, give me 10 seconds and shut down. Otherwise, if it's already noticing a cable has gone to 12 amps, something is not right with the cable, let it shut down. But that doesn't have the Thermal Protect, unless, I guess, technically if you're running the Thermal Protect cable, but the PinSense is built into the power supply and the digital controller that's in there. Now we take a look right here at the HX100i. This is not a display piece, this is actually a transparent power supply. They figured, if you're now putting a good chunk of cash into a power supply, you might as well at least make it look cool. This has both. This has Thermal Protect and PinSense, where you could go in and configure all of those same safety features that you have with the RM1200E, but it has this more enthusiast look. It has the IQ fan built into it, or the Link fan built into it, so that you can go in and configure the fan cooling, the fan lighting for your power supply. Obviously, it shows real-time power draw. All of the normal digital specs that you would see from any Link power supply in the Corsair ecosystem. So it gives you a full snapshot of what's happening with your system and will protect your graphics card no matter which graphics card you put in there. And because it's doing it at a hardware level, it'll be interesting to compare what something like this is saying our graphics card, like our Astral, is pulling versus what the Astral is reporting it's pulling, because this is doing it through hardware at the source versus at the device like the graphics card is. So it'd be interesting to compare those numbers and see, because if we saw two different numbers on either end, we could even figure out efficiency loss across the cable if we wanted. There's a lot of neat use cases for something like that. All right, guys, it's time to go ahead and get on out of here. There's a lot to show at Corsair. Sure, you saw some B-roll here of things we didn't even necessarily talk about. Corsair never disappoints to have a lot to show at these shows, and it's a breath of fresh air to see something here that I didn't even see the letters AI, which is kind of cool. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys. What's your favorite thing that you saw so far at the Corsair booth? I can't wait to get my hands on some of this stuff to start testing in our lab. Something like this in our lab at a high wattage would be great to just have another point of data that we can grab to compare when we're doing our testing and such. All right, guys, thanks for watching our Computex 2026 coverage. We've got a lot more to see. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it, and we'll see you in the next one.